Barry, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And also notice that every time Mr. Sadredin speaks, the alarm goes off like it's highlighting. We better listen to what he's saying. It's just some type of time.
Ozone levels must really be high when he speaks.
I appreciate the testimony here. It's very important issue because of the impact that it's going to have. And I've always been one that it takes in business and in everything else. You can only do so much, and then you have diminishing returns because you've gone too far. Mr. Holmstead, does the Clean Air Act allow for special treatment for places where air quality may be affected by emissions from other countries such as Mexico or China, or even in other areas of a state or region? My understanding from the testimony I've heard and what I've read is that we're not giving an account for pollution that may be created in another area and move into an area that would cause the receiving area to be a non-attainment. Is there an exemption? Is there allowance for those?
I'm sorry to have to say it's complicated.
Okay.
In theory, some of those things can be excused. In practice, EPA has never really allowed that. And one of the things you're hearing about is this exceptional events policy. It's been almost impossible for anyone to, I mean, it takes hundreds of thousands of dollars and years to try to get EPA to excuse one exceptional event. The other thing I would point out, though, is the Clean Air Act itself, and that's why we're talking about these levels. What we really should be talking about is the implications of the standard. Mm-hmm. Everybody agrees that we ought to be improving air pollution, but the way the standard setting works with all the other regulations just doesn't make any sense anymore. And right now, the Clean Air Act specifically says that certain weather events, the things that cause high episodes of ozone, cannot be excused. It says meteorological inversions and stagnant air. Those are events that are completely outside the control of any state, and yet you're held accountable for those things under the Clean Air Act. That's just one of the things that just ought to be changed.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because I'm looking at a map here, which, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to submit for the record, which is the impact area on the state of Georgia that the new standards would have as far as the areas that would be out of attainment at this point. And I also have a letter from our governor of our state, the Honorable Nathan Deal, who also served in this body at one time, who says that in these areas it would be impossible for us to reach attainment because of the way the standards are written. And I'll also point out that the area that is highlighted here that would be in non-attainment is not only the economic center of the state of Georgia, but the entire southeast. So what is the cost that we could see in an area that is so important? You're talking about one of the largest airports in the nation. Atlanta Hartsfield Airport is in this area. One of the largest power plants in the southeast is in this area. What type of economic impact or hidden cost would we expect to see with the implementation of this standard? Mr. Homestead.
The only thing we know is for sure is that the cost of everything will go up, right? Because energy is embedded in everything we do. So you're going to be paying more for lots of different things. The thing that's really hard to judge, and people have said it's certainly true that we've had economic growth even with tighter standards. But that doesn't mean that this next increment isn't going to be enormously expensive. So maybe you can continue to have economic growth there, but it will be much less than it would otherwise be, in part because you're making it very difficult for businesses to expand in that area. They just have nowhere to go.
Dr. Honeycutt, let me read a portion of this letter, and maybe you can respond to the same question. Our governor says these rules are in addition to the fuel economy standards and the Tier 3 tailpipe emission standards for cars and trucks implemented by the federal level, which increase costs for business and consumers in my state and others. This is after he's gone through a litany of other EPA regulations that have affected our area. All of these regulations have required substantial investment on the part of Georgia companies and consumers and constitute a moving target for Georgia companies. the moving target is one of those areas that I hear a lot about with federal regulations, that they are unattainable. Could you and Mr. Sadredin comment on that?
Yes, sir. He's absolutely right. EPA needs to provide the states guidance as soon as they put a rule out, not years later as they have in the past, because their deadlines are flexible, ours are not.
Mr. Sadredin?
You know, it was mentioned earlier that Congress was very clear about not including economic cost and setting the standards. The fact of the matter is, if you actually read the Supreme Court case, it said Congress failed to give any guidance on that. Therefore, absent guidance from Congress, judges, bureaucrats such as myself and my colleagues at EPA have become policymakers, and they have come up with a scenario where they say, don't worry about the cost effectiveness or economic feasibility when we set the standard during the implementation. We'll take care of that. And unfortunately, the Cleaner Act, as written right now, does not give them the flexibility and the latitude that they need with those very fixed timelines, deadlines that you have to come into attainment to actually be able to do what they claim the Cleaner Act allows them to do, to incorporate economic feasibility during the implementation phase.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I move to have both of these documents submitted to the official record.
Without objection.
And I yield back.